Greetings, ladies and mental gents, and welcome to the one-shot triple feature, taken from the HFY subreddit. All 3 stories have been written by Algae Father Anthracite. The links to the original stories will be down below. And, as always, I hope that you enjoy. Story number 1. Just a little taste. It's called a dog. Canis lupus familiaris. It's a distant relative of one of our planet's apex predators. You keep an apex predator as a pet? Oh no, dogs are different from wolves. We've been breeding them for thousands of years, so long as it predates our written records, something like 20,000 years. Can they breed together? I think so. Then that thing is an apex predator, even if it isn't a wolf. Well, he's perfectly safe. I had him trained specifically. Because I was an ambassador, I knew that he would need to be well behaved. Why is he looking at me like that? Is he hungry? Tell him I'm not food. Relax, he just wants to be pet. Here, place your hand on the flat part of his skull, right between his ears, and then run your hand down his spine. There you go. He's tasting me! He's tasting me! Calm down, don't panic. It's perfectly normal. Licking is just how they show affection. He likes you. It's fine. Down, Bruno. See, he stopped. Good boy, Bruno. He will not eat me. Nope, it won't happen. He is very soft. May I pet him again? Sure, Bruno, sit, stay. He shouldn't move or try to lick you now. I find this quite pleasing. It is one of the best reasons to have a dog. If you'd like one, we have many that are available to adopt, and I could see to it that a dog is properly trained. I do not think I could handle such a large animal. Oh, they come in all different sizes. A pug or a chihuahua would be perfect. Here, look. And you can have it trained. We actually had a breeding pair of corgis delivered to your queen as a gift. I hear she is very fond of them. I think perhaps I might like that. Good Bruno. Good Bruno. Oh, more tasting. Okay, be calm. Just a little taste. See, he likes you. End of story 1. Story number 2. Just curious. In a small room filled with chairs and a small podium, several dozen humans and aliens had gathered. Off to one side there were several screens, showing an ever-changing collage of pictures. Most featured a single human male, while others were small devices and handicrafts. Some showed groups of people as well. Zikthi approached the podium, and after a few moments the low murmur of the crowd slowed down. Dan Nicholas was a man who failed at everything he ever did. He was, in his own words, a student of failure. To me, this was a deeply troubling statement, the first time I heard it, and I have spent my life trying to succeed at every endeavor that I have undertaken. I think this demonstrates the fundamental difference in the way my thinking differed from his. Dan was not afraid to fail at anything. He would play new games and lose in spectacular fashion. He would constantly try to do new things, often making egregious mistakes and getting abject failure as a result. However, he never let such failures hold him back. He often kept them as trophies of his exploits. He was known to carry a shoulder bag as he had designed, with a strap that was too long and pockets that were too small. He had a shelf covered in small pieces of wood, which were clearly unfinished projects that he had failed. He had trinkets and doodads, as if he called them, and they had been produced by a number of different methods. All failures. I asked him once if he had ever succeeded at anything. Oh, all the time. I just usually give the good stuff away as gifts. Making stuff is fun, but I don't need half a dozen cutting boards or 200 pens. I don't need 10 blank books, but I have 10 friends who could each use one. When I asked him why he kept the bad pieces, the failures, his response was, I am not going to give away the bad ones, bud. Come on. It was more fun for him to make a thing and give it to someone than to make a thing and keep it precious to himself. There are many here who, even now, carrying a small object he had made. The Zetchki opened up a pouch in his harness and pulled out a key fob with a shiny wooden charm on it. Many of the other seats held up small items made of wood, metal, fabric, and plastic. The alien put the key fob away and proceeded. He said that he was a student of failure, because if he looked at what he had done that failed, he could learn how to avoid such failures in the future. He said that the thing that made him so talented was that failure was never an endpoint in a project. It was a lesson in how not to proceed in that next attempt. For every wooden ball that he made on the lathe, he said, at least one more had broken apart before completion. For every charm that he made with his wife, a burned lump of metal came first. He claimed falsely that he was not a particularly smart man, but that he was just curious about a lot of things, and had a lot of free time. Just curious. It was because he was just curious about the Zetchki that he first approached me. He was fascinated by our artwork. He asked if we were common practice, or if only specially trained artists made it, and which piece was my favorite. He asked me about our food, our entertainment, recommendations for literature. Every few days he would come to my office and seek some tidbit of knowledge. After a few weeks I began to expect such visits, and in short order I enjoyed them. I remember the first time he invited me to his home for a party, and how he had made a special effort to make my favorite food. It was, not good. He apologized, but he never gave up, and after 5 or 6 tries, he actually made a really good Berfgert tart. He was a good friend and a good man, and his only true failure, as far as I can tell, is leaving this place before we were all ready to let him go. May his spirit fly forever in this great bird of the galaxy. End of story number 2. Story number 3. The Old Gods. Brennan flipped through the book carefully. The paper was old, maybe thousands of years. He could not wait to decipher the text and learn what secrets the ancient truths they contained. The vessel was strangely proportioned, taller and narrower than Brennan's people would have desired. The hull was battered and torn open. It had been drifting for centuries. If the pitting on the hull plates were any indication, all the coating of the hull plates, if there had ever been any, had been sandblasted off by the interstellar dust. The small stasis box had been a puzzle when it first was discovered. It was the only power source in the otherwise derelict ship. After decades of study and reverse engineering, Brennan's people had managed to understand that the contents of the box were essentially stuck in time. As long as the power held out, the contents were immutably frozen at the same state as when the stasis field was applied. Finally, they had powered down the stasis field and opened up the box. Inside were dozens of pieces of organic matter that had been pressed into sheets. These sheets were bundled together and had been covered in almost entirely with art and symbols. More decades of study followed. The original items had been replaced in stasis. The electronic copies were distributed to the linguistics and scholars from all over the many worlds that Penix people, the Gengzi, had occupied. All known galactic languages were checked. Some progress was made, but without some key, it was slow going. Finally, nearly a century after the study, a student from the border colony noticed that the symbols were similar to the markings of an old abandoned outpost that was part of the archaeological study from his system. The ship was of a human design, and the books were written in Terran. The human civilization was not active in the Galactic Society, which is why the galactic language is not in our database. They had incompatible biology, and while there was no hostility, cultural exchange was almost non-existent. An inquiry was made and a suitable translation key was delivered. The humans asked if there had been any bodies in the vessel, and we informed them that it appeared empty. We sent them the documentation of the find, and they thanked us for finding and reporting their lost ship. We asked if they wanted the books back. They said that they appreciated the offer, but they held no significant value. A few short weeks after the key was delivered, the last of the books were translated to Gengzi. Xenoanthropology students everywhere started to dig through the newly available texts. The text were stories of gods and heroes, the tales of old sacrifice, bravery, hope, and despair. Impossible scenarios were laid out, and through logic, strength, and determination, the gods and the heroes succeeded. And occasionally, despite all of this, still occasionally they failed. The stories, along with the art that originally accompanied them, was hugely popular. They showed a deep insight into the minds of the creatures that we barely knew existed. We had bits and pieces of stories, but nothing complete. An inquiry was made to the humans. They responded that the stories were well known to them, that they were still popular amongst their kind. We asked for access to the archives. They seemed confused as to why we would want such access to such stories. We told them of how popular they were amongst the Gengzi, the increasingly other species of the galaxy. They agreed on the condition that we exchange with them a database of our own literature and art. Massive data caches were exchanged. Brenning, now the chief xenoanthropologist of the Gengzi, carefully flipped through the original artifacts and marveled at the rich, complex stories and the art. It was too bad the humans were so different biologically. If nothing else, their legend showed a deeply introspective and honorable people who would strive for justice and equality. Brennan could not wait to see more, comic books. End of story number 3. And that, my friends, is the end of this Reddit Quickie. I hope that you enjoyed. If you would like to support this channel, there are numerous ways to do so, listed in the description down below. The easiest and best way would be to share this video and my channel as much as possible. I'll see you all in the next video, and I hope that you have a good one until then. Cheers.